And Frank Gaffney joins me now, who's the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, welcome back, and you're my first chance to ask somebody, why do you think Nikki Haley is departing as United Nations ambassador for the United States? Frank? Frank, are you there? I'll tell you what, guys.
Here, Lars. No. It's not their fault. I was muted, so you didn't hear me cursing at the traffic.
No worries. We don't want to hear you cursing at traffic. That's probably a daily occurrence. Do you have some insights? I made the guess, based on what I've heard, that she has teenage kids and she'd like to spend a little time with her family, and UN ambassador is a tough job. Do you think that's close to the mark?
I think that's almost certainly a big factor. Whether that's the entirety of it, I don't know. But the truth of the matter is, there is something else that we're aware of, and that is that I believe she was governor of the state of South Carolina for 6 years before that. And that has, added to the time of being away and the stresses and so on. So I think that these are factors for anybody, and whether that's the entirety of it, I just don't know. But we don't have any other public explanation, at least at this point.
I know that there were people who were raising questions about the way the president did it, because he said, I'm holding an event. It'll be at the White House. I have some big news to announce about my great friend, Nikki Haley. I thought it was a classy way to give a send-off to a really valuable former employee, which maybe every boss in America should take a lesson from that. And I would imagine that I hope the president can get somebody almost as good as her to replace her. But that may be tough these days with the left and the never-Trumpers making a job in the Trump administration look as unattractive as they possibly can make it look.
Well, that's for sure. One of the names that is being bruited about, I have to say I'm very apprehensive about, and that is a woman who formerly was H.R. McMaster's deputy at the National Security Council, a woman by the name of Dina Powell. And she may or may not have an easy time in the Senate. I don't know. But, one of the things that many of us have admired hugely about Nikki Haley, of course, has been the absolutely forthright and tenacious and, even courageous championing of American interests in the United Nations, specifically in the Middle East, and most especially with respect to Israel. And unfortunately, in my experience, Dina Powell is not a Nikki Haley on any of those things. And those are, of course, the president's policies, so you'd expect her to champion them. But she has been, in, again, my experience, very much susceptible to the blandishments, shall we say, of the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. She hails from Egypt originally, and I think this would be a terrible mistake. So I hope that's not where the president's going to wind up. But you're right, Lars. Anybody is going to face the gauntlet, unless this is going to come up presumably after the election, and perhaps the Democrats will be chastened. Let's hope so.
Well, tell me this. One of the things I fail to understand, Frank, is when someone takes a job working for someone or something, either an entity, a business entity, or a political entity, and says, I really don't subscribe to the beliefs of this entity, the policies or the charter of this group, or I'm going to work for a person and I don't agree with him, but I'll take the job. And then I'll deliberately, and we've seen this happen in the Trump administration a bunch of times in the last 2 years, just say, I'm going to take the job and then I'm going to do whatever the heck I want to do with the job, no matter what the boss thinks. Why do people do that? And why do they get away with it?
I think they do it because they often have the hubris to think that they know better than the president that appointed them to that position. They often are even contemptuous of the person who gave them the job. And the question is, as you say, how do they get away with it? And unfortunately, in the first year of the Trump administration, there was altogether too much of that. I think probably, at least in part, because the president was, spending most of his waking hours trying to contend with the various investigations and allegations and other personnel challenges and an occasional crisis or two. And as a result, folks who should have been called to account weren't, and it only incentivizes them to do more of it. And frankly, it serves as an example for others to do the same. So that's a problem, and I think it's gotten considerably better. My sense of it, at least, is with Mike Pompeo at State and John Bolton at the National Security Council, at least in those parts of the national security arena.
See, that's the thing I've wondered about because, Frank, honestly, there are some groups. If the ACLU called me up and said, we'll pay you a pile of money to come down and be our press spokesman for the ACLU, I'd say, thank you very much. No. Immediately, no. I don't fit. I believe in civil liberties. I don't believe in the way that they're doing it. On the other hand, there might be individuals that I would say yes too quickly or no too quickly. But I can't imagine going to work and promising to take a paycheck to do a job, intending to not do the job, because I think, and intending, if anything, to undercut the beliefs and the philosophy of the person I'm going to work for. Unless I sat down with them and said, yeah, I'll go to work for you, but I believe the way you've been doing things is wrong and that you can do much better if you do it my way. And if your employer, your prospective employer says, why, you're probably right, we'll let you change the way we're doing things, then you might take the job. But deciding to deliberately torpedo your employers to satisfy some other goal, I just do not I can't wrap my head around it, Frank.
Well, and this is why, unfortunately, we have a lot of swamp creatures and very few Lars Larsons. So we could use a lot more of you here, I can tell you that. And again, I called it the phenomenon of the insubordinate subordinates during President Trump's first year in office. H.R. McMaster, as I mentioned, Dina Powell's old boss, was a prime example of this. And I think we've talked about this before, but just right off the box, the day he joined the National Security Council, he announced to his staff that he did not approve of the use of the term radical Islamic terrorism, which you may remember was something the president actually said repeatedly and campaigned for office on as a platform of what was going to be different about his administration from Obama's. It was just one early indication that he was a bad choice and a mistake, and I'm so grateful that he's gone and so appreciative that John Bolton was selected as his replacement. A good man who I think is completely aligned with the president.
Ambassador Bolton is the best. And frankly, Frank, I'm talking to Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy, I think it'd be the height of dishonesty to walk in and tell an employer, I'm going to go to work for you, and not say, by the way, Mr. President, you are entirely wrong about radical Islamic terrorism, and I plan to say so. And if you still want to hire me, then go ahead and hire me, but hire me knowing that that's true. In my example of that, Frank, I don't have a college degree, and I've told every employer who ever thought about hiring me, by the way, I do not have I've got a year and a half of college, but I don't have a college degree, because I don't want to hear about it later when you say we just found that out. For McMaster to do that, I think it was constructively dishonest by simply leaving out information, knowing that he was going to try and torpedo the president. Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy.